today I'm going to talk to you a bit about the real estate market in Portugal, how to maneuver in, and my personal experience with it. So, about the market in Portugal. The real estate market in Portugal is not balanced at all. I came to realize this more and more, especially now that I'm working in it. Because before being a consultant, I was a property owner. And as a property owner, I didn't enjoy my experience neither as a buyer or as a seller. So I'm going to start by telling you a bit about that. If you do have any questions, do post them in the comments. I may not go over them right away, but I will come back to every single comment. And if you do have anything you would like me to talk about later, I will be doing a live every week, either Friday or Saturday. So if I think that's something I would like to talk about, I will be going over that in another week. So starting about today's topic. So it's a kind of a lengthy topic, but starting with my experience. So my first experience was obviously with buying. And when I was looking at buying, it was in Portimão. And I think it's nice to tell you about how that happened too. I started looking at buying because the rent prices were ridiculous, to be honest, for local. And I could afford it, so I figured it was a much smart investment to buy something that was mine, and I could later on sell or rent or do whatever I wanted. So that's why I started looking into buying in Portimão, because I didn't agree with the rent prices and I could afford to buy it, so I went ahead and did it. Obviously, the first thing you need to do when you want to buy is research what property is available in the market. So I went into the usual websites, and if you want to know which ones I recommend, I would say the most used ones are Idealista and Imo Virtual. Those two are the most popular one in the Portuguese market, and they have a lot of listings. Now, there's a bit of a problem with them. That is that all the agencies list there, so you get a lot of repetition. Because here in Portugal, you have a thing that apparently it doesn't happen in a lot of other places, but owners that are looking to sell can sign with multiple agencies, and that's the standard practice here. So you can have a house being sold by 10 agents, and that can even happen at different prices. So it can be a bit crazy for people coming from the outside, like what's going on here. But unfortunately, this is a fairly common practice, especially when it comes to property directed to the foreign markets. So, as I was saying, the first thing you should do when looking into buying is look at that kind of things. Another thing I do recommend is, if you're already here, I do recommend to just drive around and see the for sale signs, because often they are from agencies and sometimes they are directly from the owner. The only problem with that, if you are on your own and you don't speak Portuguese, is that the contracts can be tricky, and it's a good idea to check if everything is legal. So if you want to go that route, definitely hire a lawyer to go over everything before you sign anything. So eventually I did all of that, and I was looking into buying. I saw 2 apartments that I got really interested in when I was buying. It was, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I'm not sure. The first apartment, it was much cheaper, and at the time I was actually going to ask for a loan, and so I went and got an appraisal from the bank to see what the value of the apartment would be, because that has relevance on the spread and on how much the bank will loan you. So I told the agent from the start that I wouldn't be interested in anything that would be the energy certificate under C. He told me that it was, and so I went ahead and got the appraisal done. And when the appraisal from the bank came back, I saw that the energy certificate from that apartment was an E, and that's very terrible rating. That means that the construction would be terrible. So obviously I was not happy at all with the agent misleading me. I had already made a hold contract, and thankfully those kind of contracts can be annulled and you get your deposit back in this kind of situation. So it's also good to know the difference between a hold contract and a promise contract. The promise contract is binding, and the hold contract can be annulled and refunded if the property does not match your requirements, like it happened with me. So be very aware of these two, as they may seem similar. So the next thing I did, obviously after getting all of this cancelled, was look into another apartment. And obviously I was very unhappy with the service I had received from agencies. So I just went on and found an apartment directly from the seller. In this case, I went and bought directly from the constructor. Everything went smoothly. I bought the apartment, did the scripture, moved in. Everything was fine after that. I already had my own knowledge as I own property, so it was a bit easier to screen the things and make the contracts. Also because I have people related to law in the family, so it was easy for me to get a second opinion. I got my apartment in Portimão, and I was very happy with that. At the time, before I bought the apartment, I was paying 550 euros for rent for a one-bedroom apartment. It was a decent apartment in a good building in a good area. But the landlord was going around on how he needed to increase and making a lot of pressure on that. So I just was tired of it all and decided I was just going to buy. And I was paying around 360 euros a month for the bank payments. That included the insurance. So I would say, if you can afford the down payment, which in my case was 10%, definitely go for buying over renting. There is also the fees that you have to pay when you sign the scripture. I paid around 3,500 euros, if I'm not mistaken. And my apartment, I bought it for 140k. So I do have the tables for all the values you can expect on my website. And here in Portugal, those kind of fees, they are called the EMT. Those are the transmission fees. And they are calculated based on the value of the house, and based on that they have a tier of tax that you pay, and then you have a deductible based on also the use you're going to have for the house. So if it's for your own residence, it's going to be cheaper than if it's a second home or for renting purposes. So do keep that in mind. And you also have to pay imposto de selo at the same time that you pay the EMT, and all of that is paid on the scripture day out of pocket. There's no installments of that. So do always keep those two costs in mind. About owning property, you have IMI every year. So the IMI is basically the owning tax, and it is charged by the town hall. It is slightly variable between districts and towns. So do look into the place that you are going to buy in to check how much IMI you will be paying. So that is basically covers the process of buying. I will once again tell you to be very, very careful with agencies. As I told you, I had bad experiences on my own, and actually that puts me off from property and to working with property for a very long time, because honestly, I just didn't like how the market operated, so I just had no interest in going into it. That's until I realized I could do things differently, and that's when I started this business. So the big agencies, the training they give is usually just on sales. So I find it this a bit strange. There should be a lot more regulation. There is, of course, fines for not keeping up certain things, like if you put pictures that are not of the property, there's a fine. However, you can put pictures of 3Ds of projects that are approved for that property. Or could be they just need to have a little sign on the picture or on the ad saying these are previews of what can be done here. But it's still legal, so be very careful with that, because there are some very, very good 3Ds. And it's also legal to set their own prices. So now we're going to the phase 2 of my direct experience with real estate. That's when I sold my apartment. So when I decided to sell my apartment, I decided I would first try on my own. So I put an ad up, and within the day, I had contacts for like 20 agencies calling me within hours. Like my phone wouldn't start ringing, and everyone offered me exactly the same thing. There was like 1 or 2% occasionally difference on the commission. All of them were basically offering me marketing services, and some even like agents from the same agency would come and try to sign me, and then eventually they just realized, I'm like, I think I already signed with this agency. Oh, okay. Then I can't sign you. Like, they have no communication even inside the same agency, and that just bugs me. And another thing that I noticed is some of the agents, because I had set my own price for selling, and I was putting it slightly under the value of market because I wanted to sell fast. And some of them came to me and said like, okay, I can sell this for more. If I sell this for more, do you want more percentage, or can I get the rest of the commission? I'm just like, no, sorry, if you don't sell this for more. I set the price, and this is the price for every agency. But if the seller, the house owner, agrees to this, they can put whatever the hell price they want. And sometimes I've had clients come and tell me that they've seen houses that have 100K difference on the price, and that's just crazy. So this really needs to be more regulated. Another thing that incurs fines here is to advertise without the energy certificate. So be very careful about that. And it's actually more common than you should think, because their fines are actually quite heavy. But since most people don't know about this, they just do whatever they want. And since no one denounces them, it usually just passes. So I was telling you about the regulations and actual fines. So the energy certificate is one of them. Be very careful about that. Some agents do like to downplay the importance of the energy certificate, and that is not professional at all. And this happens because the energy certificate only started being mandatory in the Portuguese real estate market. I don't know if it was 6 or 8 years ago. I know I was already in my 20s, so it wasn't that long ago. Before that, all the property and construction wasn't really that regulated when it comes to isolation, both when sound isolation and temperature isolation. So most of it was terrible. And that came to the surface when the energy certificate started being mandatory. So now you have all this construction with terrible energy certificates, and well, in the most cases, they still have to sell it. So they would try downplay the energy certificate. So I'm just going to illustrate a bit of the importance of the energy certificate. So what happens when there is a bad energy certificate is that you pay a lot more of electricity and water, and you spend a lot more to try and heat the place. Like, for example, my mother, they have their own house bought, of course, and the windows are terrible. They're really terrible. And I've been telling her since forever that they need to put new windows, and that will make a huge difference. And they wouldn't do that because they didn't want to spend the money. And last year she finally did that and put new windows, and her bills, her electricity bills, went to 1/10 of what she spent in the summer, on the winter, sorry, for heating and such, because the house was much better isolated. So that happens just with better windows. Imagine with the whole house being properly isolated. It makes a lot of difference when it comes to monthly spendings, and it also makes a lot of difference when it comes to humidity and overall duration and well kept of the inside of your house, because it will be much better insulated from everything. So do pay a lot of attention to the energy certificates. I'm not 100% sure of the exact values, but I think from tier to tier it starts in F and goes up until A+, and from each tier the difference is about 10 times. I think it's something like that, but it's huge. So do pay a lot of attention to that. That's the thing, it should affect. When there's a property sold with a lower energy certificate, supposedly it should be cheaper because the construction isn't as well made, and if you want to insulate things properly, you will have to do some small renovations. But what happens here is, since the agents try to downplay the energy certificate, they don't take it into consideration on the price at all. So, for example, just now, one of my clients was showing me a property that was listed for 1.3 million and had the energy certificate. And I just think that's completely crazy. Not only is that price completely off the standards, and realistically speaking, no one in Portugal would be able to afford that in the local market. It's not even well construction. So fortunately, there's a lot of this kind of listings here in Portugal, things that are just incredibly gauge, and the prices are completely off reality, and some of them still sell because people don't know. And I have one client from America and another, I'm speaking to quite a few Americans, and they've told me about the market there, and it's completely different prices and a completely different level. So people that come from there, even though they expect things to be cheaper, they have no idea how much cheaper it is. So really, really do your research before you consider buying anywhere. And parts of my service are exactly that. And I've made it this way so the client is at rest that I have absolutely no interest in upselling them. My interest is exactly the opposite. I want my clients to get the most out of their money, and I don't do that out of the goodness of my heart. I do that because I believe that it is also much more economically sustainable for the local economy, because there is a huge gap in the markets right now, the market for foreigners and the market for locals. And the more the market for foreigners grows, it becomes prohibitive for locals. So the foreign investor can bring a lot of good things, but it's making things unsustainable for the locals in some ways. So avoiding this gap and fighting this gap is also good for the local economy, and I think makes a lot more sense, not just from an ethical point of view, but also from an economical point of view, and it benefits everyone except they're trying to skyrocket the prices. So this is one of the reasons I founded this business, and everyone that I've talked to so far has appreciated this and told me that it's long-awaited service that was needed here, so I'm very glad for that. And if you do want to work with me and are curious about my method, feel free to check my website at www.savvycatchrealty.com. I have all the information listed there, including the prices and how I operate, and also some informative articles you can check. And you can also email me at contacts@savvycatchrealty.com, or just comment here or message, so I'm very easy to reach. And that will be all for today. Thank you so much, and see you next week.